Welcome to our deep dive, everybody. Today we're tackling keyword-driven frameworks for software testing.
A popular subject.
Yeah, you're here. That means you're interested in making testing a little smoother. And this approach, well,
It really could change the game.
especially for automation,
For sure. Especially if you've got folks on the team who,
who maybe aren't hardcore coders,
Right. Exactly.
it can make it much more,
Collaborative.
that's the word.
Yeah. Keyword-driven frameworks are great because they really help you separate the what from the where and the how of testing.
Okay.
The actions you want to perform, that's the what.
Right.
And then you've got the data and the scripts, the nitty-gritty, and that's your where and how.
Okay, that separation, that's what makes it easier to
No,
manage and scale.
Yeah.
Especially as those projects, they start to
They get big. They get complex.
get big and messy.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm intrigued, but let's back up a bit. If I'm just starting to think about automation, what exactly is a keyword-driven framework?
Oh, it's actually pretty simple at its core. You're using plain language keywords to describe all those test steps.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, think of it like a set of instructions that anyone can understand.
Okay.
So you might have words like click, input text, or,
Verify element.
yes,
Or
exactly.
like I'm not writing code,
No.
I'm creating a recipe
A recipe. Yeah, that's a great way to think about it.
using these keywords.
And the best part, the real beauty of this is that these keywords, they can be reused.
Oh, okay.
So let's say you've got this click function.
Right.
You can use that same function to click on any button in your application. Just change the data input that tells it which button to target.
So it's efficient and it's flexible.
That's exactly it.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Because I can already see when you get these bigger projects,
Oh, yeah.
lots of repetitive actions, it's a huge time saver.
It really is. And, the source material, they have this Lego analogy.
Oh, yeah, the Lego.
Yeah, could you expand on that a bit? How does that apply to this, to keyword-driven frameworks?
Well, you're essentially building a system
Right.
where you define these bricks, the functions, and you're using simple instructions, the keywords and the data, to tell the framework how to put them together.
Exactly. That's the heart of it. You're building something complex out of simple, reusable parts.
It's like a much more, how do I put it?
Organized.
Organized, yes.
Intuitive.
Intuitive.
It makes sense, right?
It does. And I think to really get into it, we have to kind of unpack it.
Let's break it down.
Let's unpack the pieces. What are the essential elements
Mhm.
of this type of framework?
Okay, so first off, you've got your keywords. They're like the verbs, the action words, defining what needs to happen in your test.
So they tell the framework, do this.
Right. But then you need the specifics.
Right.
You need to provide the context, and that's where test data comes in.
Okay.
That's where you're storing all the details. Element locator.
Wait, can we pause for a sec?
Sure.
For folks who are new to this,
Oh, right, of course.
what exactly are element locators?
It's like an address.
Okay.
It tells the script where to find a specific element on your page. Like if you want it to click a button, the element locator says, hey, the button is right here.
So I'm picturing a map,
Yes.
and the locator is like the coordinates.
Exactly. You might use things like ID, name, class, or even XPath. It all depends on how your page is structured.
I got it.
Good.
So the test data provides that context.
Okay.
What about what actually reads those instructions?
Ah, that's your driver script. It's like the conductor of the orchestra.
Uh-huh.
It reads those keywords and the data, figures out what needs to happen, and then calls the right functions.
Delegate.
That's
Like
the boss.
So where do those functions live? The actual code that makes it all happen.
That's your function library, the powerhouse of the whole operation.
Okay.
It's where each keyword has its own dedicated function, defining exactly what it does.
Could you give an example?
Sure. Imagine you've got an input text function.
Mm-hmm.
If it's written in Java, it might look a little something like this. Well, I can't show you the code right now, but it takes two things: the element locator and the value you want to type.
So first it finds the right spot,
Using the locator.
and then it types it in.
Yeah, essentially. And the cool thing is you can reuse that same function to input text anywhere as long as you give it the right locator and value.
So we're building a toolbox,
Yeah.
and the driver script is like the handyman.
Picking the right tool for the job.
I like it. Okay, so to really solidify this, can we walk through an example, like a real world? How does this play out?
Absolutely. Let's go back to that login scenario we talked about earlier.
Okay, so I'm imagining we've got our test data,
Right?
and it says something like input text username field test doser.
Perfect. So the driver script sees that and it knows, okay, time to call the input text function.
And that function knows where the username field is.
Thanks to the locator.
And types in test user.
Boom. Just like that. One step of the login process automated.
Okay, now I'm really seeing it. Like the Lego analogy. It's spot on.
It's a powerful way to build, isn't it?
It is. Okay, I'm ready to learn more about how to construct these frameworks effectively. Like, what are the best practices?
Let's get into that. It all starts with the keywords themselves.
So we've got these keywords. Where do we start? How do we build this framework right?
It's all about clarity. Really. Think of your keywords like labels on those Lego bricks.
Yeah.
You want them to instantly tell you what that brick does, you know?
Right. So no jargon?
No. Keep it simple. Language that anyone on the team can understand.
It's not just for the coders then?
Nope, not at all. Business analysts, testers, project managers, everyone should be able to look at a test case and immediately know what's going on.
So instead of a keyword like verify login.
Which is kind of vague, right?
Yeah.
Better to break it down. Input text, click, verify element.
Much more specific.
Exactly. Each keyword focused on just one action makes it way easier to read, understand, and maintain those tests.
Got it. Clear keywords, that's the foundation. What else is important?
Organization. Just like you wouldn't throw all your Lego bricks in one giant bin, right?
Right.
You got to keep that test data structured, well organized.
So it's not just about having the data, it's about accessibility.
Exactly. It needs to be easy to find, modify, understand. A few key things here. First, centralize your test data.
One place for everything.
Exactly. Whether it's an Excel sheet, a database, or some fancy tool, having a single source of truth is key.
Okay, that makes sense. Then what?
Naming conventions. Use clear, descriptive names for all those data elements. No cryptic abbreviations.
Like writing comments in your code.
Exactly. You're basically self-documenting your data. So if you have a field for the username, call it username. Don't try to be clever with usRNM or something.
Right. Consistency is key, so anyone can jump in and understand it. What about the format of the data?
Oh, super important. Dates, columns, even using colors to highlight important stuff. Keep it consistent.
So basically, treat your test data with the same care as your code.
You got it. Clean, organized, well-documented data. It's the fuel that powers your whole framework.
Makes sense. Now let's talk about those inevitable hiccups, the errors.
Yes, because software, it doesn't always play nice.
Never does. So how do we build a framework that can handle those gracefully, yes, without everything falling apart?
Robust error handling.
Yeah.
Anticipate those problems and have a plan to catch them.
So if the test hits a snag, it shouldn't just crash and burn.
Exactly. A good framework will have error handling routines. Capture the error, log it, maybe even take a screenshot, and then move on to the next test. No drama.
Like a safety net.
I like that analogy. So you might use try-catch blocks in your code.
Okay, and those do what?
They let you say, try this code, and if it breaks, do this instead. You can also use assertions to check for expected conditions.
So if an assertion fails, it triggers a specific action.
Yep. Maybe log the error, skip to the next step, whatever makes sense for that particular test.
Okay, so these safety nets are crucial. Now, we talked about keywords being simple and focused. What about the function library itself?
Same principle applies. You want modularity.
Break it down for me. What does that mean in this context?
Smaller, reusable functions, each one doing a specific task. Like instead of one big login function, you'd have separate ones for enter username, enter password, click login button.
Like a well-organized toolbox.
Exactly. And then as your application evolves...
Because it will.
Oh yeah. The UI changes, new features, you name it.
Your framework needs to keep up.
It does. You got to review your keywords, your data, your functions, make sure they're all still accurate. Button ID changes. Update that element locator.
And communication is key here.
It's huge. You got to know what the devs are doing so you can be proactive.
Stay ahead of the game.
Exactly. And of course, document everything. Makes it way easier for anyone who needs to make updates down the line.
Right, because good documentation saves everyone headaches later. Now, the source material also mentioned reporting. Why is that so important?
Oh, reporting is crucial. It's like your dashboard telling you how your testing is doing.
So it's not just about running tests, it's about understanding the results.
Right. You need to know how many tests passed, how many failed, how long they took.
Basic metrics.
But you can go deeper. Identify patterns, problem areas, even track trends over time. Are things getting better or worse?
So it's not just about finding bugs, it's about continuous improvement.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to use visuals, charts, graphs. Make those reports engaging, easier to understand. Tell a story with your data.
Okay, so we've got clear keywords, organized data, robust error handling, and insightful reporting. This is a lot to keep in mind.
It is. But when it all comes together,
It's a thing of beauty.
more like a well-oiled machine. But before we get too excited, let's talk about some of the common pitfalls.
Yeah.
Things people mess up.
Okay, like what? What should we be watching out for?
Overcomplicating things. People try to cram too much into a single keyword or function.
So keep it simple.
Keep it simple. Stick to those single actions and break down complex stuff into smaller pieces.
Got it. What else?
Neglecting error handling, they think, oh, my tests will always run perfectly.
Yeah.
Famous last words.
And then boom, something unexpected pops up.
And the whole thing crashes. That's why those safety nets, those try-catch blocks, those assertions, they're so important.
Right, those safety nets are key. Anything else?
Lack of maintenance. People build the framework and then they forget about it.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly. But your application is going to change. The framework needs to change with it.
Otherwise, your tests become useless.
Pretty much. It's like using an old map to navigate a new city. You're going to get lost.
Yeah.
And then the data itself.
What about it?
People don't give it enough love. They
Yeah.
use confusing names, inconsistent formatting. It's a mess.
So even if you have the right data, it's no good if no one can understand it.
Exactly. Take the time to make it clear, concise, well-documented. Your future self will thank you for it.
Okay, I'm getting the picture. This is more than just writing code. It's about good software engineering principles in general.
Absolutely. And communication, clear communication with the rest of the team, and a commitment to maintenance, keeping things up to date.
I'm seeing that. So why do all this? Why go through all this effort? What's the payoff?
It boils down to efficiency, quality, and speed. You want to deliver better software faster.
Let's unpack that. Efficiency. How does this approach boost efficiency?
It frees up your team. They're not bogged down with those repetitive manual tasks. They can focus on the more complex stuff.
The things that require human intuition, creativity.
Exactly. Let the machines handle the boring, predictable stuff.
Okay, what about quality? How does this help us build better software?
Structure and reusability lead to fewer errors, plain and simple. And when you catch those bugs early, they're way easier to fix.
It's cheaper, less frustrating.
For everyone involved. And ultimately, higher quality means happier customers.
And happier customers mean
More business.
it's a win-win. So, increased efficiency, higher quality, faster delivery. That's a pretty compelling case for this approach.
It's a shift in mindset, really, making testing a core part of development, not just something you tack on at the end.
I like that.
Yeah.
So to sum up, keyword-driven frameworks are about a lot more than just testing techniques. They're a way of thinking about software development as a whole.
And they can have a huge impact on your process, your product, and even your bottom line.
I'm sold. Before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, any parting thoughts?
This whole idea of keywords and data-driving actions, it's not limited to software.
Okay.
Think about it. We use instructions and data to automate things all the time. Setting up a smart home device, making a spreadsheet, even following a recipe.
Whoa, yeah. So this concept, it's all around us.
Exactly. Systems that use keywords and data to make our lives easier.
So maybe we can learn from those systems.
Absolutely. Take those principles and apply them to other areas where you want to be more efficient.
Mind blown. All right, to our listener, as we head into the final stretch, I challenge you, think about how you can apply this to your own work, your own life.
Get creative. Think outside the box.
What tasks could you automate using these principles? That's pretty mind-blowing, to be honest.
It is when you start to see it.
But I think for our listeners who are, ready to dive in,
Yeah,
they need some tools.
the practical stuff.
They need to know, how do we actually build these keyword-driven frameworks?
Right. Well, luckily, there are tons of tools out there
Okay.
to make it all easier.
Like what?
Well, for managing your test data, there are things like Excel libraries,
Okay.
which let you interact with those spreadsheets right from your code.
Oh, interesting.
So you can pull data from the spreadsheet, use it to drive your tests, even write the results back into it,
All within the framework.
all within the framework.
Yeah.
It's really great for, especially for like non-programmers
Oh, I see.
who are maybe involved in creating those test cases.
Makes it easy for them to understand.
Exactly. Then you have testing frameworks like TestNG and JUnit.
Okay, familiar with those.
They give you that structure for writing and executing your tests, managing dependencies, generating those reports.
So they're like, I'm picturing like the scaffolding, the structure
That's a good way to put it.
to build on.
Exactly. They handle a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff So you can focus on your keywords, your functions, the test data itself.
And then, of course, we need those reports.
Of course, you got to make sense of all those results.
It's how I see the big picture.
Right. And there are some fantastic reporting tools that can really give you those insights.
What kind of insights are we talking about?
Well, you can go beyond just pass-fail.
Right.
Analyze trends, pinpoint problem areas, maybe even predict potential issues before they happen.
So it's like taking all that data
and
turning it into something actionable.
Exactly. Data-driven decisions. Always a good thing.
Always a good thing. Well, we'll be sure to include links to all of these tools in the show notes so our listeners can check them out.
Definitely.
Now, before we wrap things up completely,
I
want to go back to that idea you mentioned earlier.
About applying these principles outside of software testing.
Yes. I've been thinking about it, and it's actually quite amazing when you start to look around.
It really is. We get so focused on the technical side.
Right.
But those core concepts,
they're everywhere.
They really are. Breaking down a task into smaller steps, using clear instructions data to guide the process, you can apply that to anything.
Literally anything.
Organizing your to-do list, planning a vacation, even automating your morning routine.
It's like we're already doing it in a lot of ways.
We are. Think about following a recipe.
Okay.
You've got the ingredients, that's your data, and then the instructions, those are your keywords. Combine them the right way, and you get a delicious meal.
It's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And it makes it so much less intimidating, I think.
Right. It's not some abstract concept. It's something we do every day.
So to our listeners out there, I challenge you. Look around your life, your work. Where can you apply these ideas?
Could you build a framework for managing your finances? Organizing your inbox? What about that big project at work?
The possibilities are endless. And it's all about working smarter, not harder.
Absolutely. Take control. Automate those tedious tasks.
Free up your time and energy.
For the things that matter.
I love it. Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. From the nuts and bolts of these frameworks.
To the bigger picture, how they can apply to other parts of our lives.
I hope our listeners have found it valuable.
I hope so too. It's a fascinating approach to testing.
And it really makes you think differently about how you approach, well, everything, really.
It does. And remember, the learning never stops.
Never.
There are always new tools, new techniques.
New things to explore.
Exactly. So keep learning, keep experimenting, and please share what you learn with others.
That's so important.
Yeah.
Because we can all learn from each other.
Absolutely. The testing community is amazing.
So supportive.
So helpful. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Connect with other testers.
It's a journey we can take together.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into keyword-driven frameworks. It's been a pleasure.
The pleasure was all mine.
Happy testing, everyone.
And happy automating.